Hey, welcome everyone. Welcome to another episode of Caspio Labs. This is Ned from Caspio. Thanks for coming back. We always have good content. I know I always say that before the beginning of every live stream. But today we're going to be looking at, you can hear me? Good, thank you. We can avoid that question. My audio is working, so we can begin today's live stream. First and foremost, welcome everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. Hey, Katie. Good to see you as well. Today we're going to be looking at pivot tables and how we can, performance-wise, the main takeaway of today's live stream is to see how Caspio handles large data sets. So if your tables contain 1 million entries, 2 million entries, we want to be able to see, if our data pages can handle the speed, performance, and how quickly we can render the data from the database. Loud and clear? Okay, good. Thank you for the confirmation. Before I begin, I'm curious to know if was anyone successful at implementing the Modal plugin that we talked about last live stream? I know Katie was able to do it correctly, so that's good to know. But anyone else? Did anyone struggle with that implementation, or were you able to add the pop-up? Looks good. Excellent. You can't have drop-down menus? Interesting. Let me take a look. I was going to bring up another issue that came up, which was brought up by somebody in the live stream last time, that if you have that pop-up window, the question was, first of all, I don't have any issues with drop-downs on my end. I'll have to take a look at autocomplete, but the drop-down should work perfectly. I don't know why that's happening. That's something that, if you want, you can send me the link to your app offline. I'll take a look at it. If you give me a demo credentials to log into your applications, I'll have to inspect and see why the dropdown is not working for you, but you shouldn't have any issues with dropdowns. But the issue that came up was the hint. So if you have hint enabled, it's not going to work unless you add a little bit of CSS to your data page. Because if you don't add that CSS, this pop-up is going to appear behind the actual modal window. Okay, it's not going to be up here over the form. So what you need to do is add a little bit of CSS, and I will go ahead and just open up my application so that you can see that code. On the report, let me open it, manage users, and here above the button, or below the button, actually, sorry, above the button, the one that launches the modal window, you have to add a little bit of styling above it. Okay, which is going to put that label pop-up in front of the modal, and it's going to be able to show up. Okay. Hey, Tracy. Welcome back. I'll test the autocomplete later to see if it works on my end, but I didn't have any issues with drop-downs, so hopefully we can find a solution for you as well. Just ping me offline. I'll take a look. I can inspect it and find out for you. But glad to see that many of you are able to implement that successfully. It's really cool to do that just because for the end user, it makes it easy for them to be able to submit the form without having to go to a new web page and then come back. All right, so I can update the document in the description of the YouTube video. I'll go ahead and add this later to my document. And if you guys encounter any more issues regarding the Modal plugin, just let me know offline. And we definitely want to keep track of everything so that we can know how to optimize and modify for that and make it available for everyone else to use. Okay. No issues? Okay. Thank you, King Capo. Good. Let's cancel that and let's go into our main presentation today. Pivot tables. So the first thing we're going to look at is my table. And let's open the table, and you're going to be able to see my data. I have just north of 1 million entries, so we have 1,048,000. That's the table size. And in my table, we have the units sold, we have the unit price, and we have the unit cost. And we're going to be doing some calculations on the front end, on the data page side, so that we can get the total revenue, which is units sold times the unit price, minus the cost, which is going to be units sold times the unit cost. And that's going to give us the profit. Okay, revenue minus cost is going to equal to profit. Now, we can also perform those calculations on the table level. So for those of you who need to store the calculation on the table, you can add formula data types and perform those calculations so that you can see that directly in the table. But for today's live stream, I chose to just display that on the front end and render that in real time using the data page. Because I wanted to show you guys how quickly Caspio can calculate that, even if you have 1 million entries in the database. And you should always check for performance, no matter what tool you use, because it wouldn't be good for the end user to be looking at a blank screen while the data is loading. You know, that's just not good for anybody. You know, time equals money. And if they're just staring at a blank screen while the data is loading behind the scenes, that's just not going to be good for business. Okay. So let's see how we can do those calculations using the data page. The first one that I've set up for us today is a very simple pivot table that does the grouping based on region, because in my table, we also have a region field. And then what I'm doing, like I said, we're doing total revenue, we're doing total cost, and we're doing the total profit. And we're also summarizing the data based on the employee name. And take a look and see how quickly Caspio can run this pivot table. When I reload the data page, it's instantaneous. There's no lag, even with 1 million entries. Now, the expected behavior, even if you have 2 million entries, 5 million entries, you might experience a slight lag, but it should never be upwards of 10 seconds or 20 seconds that you have to wait. And even if that's the case, we can still optimize your account with a different plan to make it much faster for the end user. Okay, like I said, time equals money, and there's no reason why your end user should have to sit there and wait that long in order to see the data. And if you ever have any kind of lag, let's say 1 second or 2 seconds, you can improve the usability by adding a very simple loading bar. And if you watch one of my earlier videos that I recorded on YouTube, I have a tutorial that does exactly that. Okay, it basically, if the screen is blank, it's going to replace it with a loading bar. And when the loading bar finishes, it's going to show you the data. And that video, let me just pull it up very quickly. Give me 1 second. If you go to YouTube and you look for, let me move this here. Let's say you were looking for Caspio loading bar. That's the video. It's only 3.5 minutes long. And if you look inside the description, you're going to be able to find that tutorial and instructions how you can do that. I'm going to actually show you how that's done, which is a lot of fun. I'm going to bring that in. Give me 1 second. So we'll be using this simple JS to add that loading bar in front of our data page. And you can actually add this to any one of your data pages, right? So even if you have a dashboard view with many data pages, if you use that tutorial and then your charts, your pivot tables, your tabular report, they're all going to have that loading bar, which is really nice instead of having to sit there and wait until everything loads. So we'll be looking at that in just a moment. So let's see how this pivot table was created. Let's go back to our data pages. And this one is called 1 million entries. Okay, that's the first one. We're going to hit edit. I'm using a pivot table. That's the data set, that one that has over 1 million entries. We're going to hit next, next. Not filtering based on any one of my fields. And here, when you set up the pivot table, at the moment, I'm not using any columns. But I have a few other examples here that we're going to look at that uses columns, okay, to break down the data even further. But for now, we're going to look at a simple row, which uses the region. I'm doing my grouping. It's a collapsible group. And I have the employee names. And I'm calculating 3 different things here. Okay, so first we're looking at units sold times the unit price. Hopefully everyone knows how to use calculated fields. You can add them by clicking on the plus sign, and you can insert additional ones if you'd like. So that's the first calculation that we're getting, which is in this column here, total revenue. Okay, then total cost, which is units sold times the unit cost. And you're simply basically adding your fields using this picker that we have here. And then the total, which takes the units sold times the unit price minus the units sold times the unit cost. That's going to give us our profit. And that's the very last column that you're looking at right over here. Okay. But what I'm trying to get across here is that the speed and performance, how quickly Caspio is able to separate all the data based on the employee name so quickly, even if you have 1 million entries in the database. Okay, it's critical to have the data load up that fast. Okay, My second example that we're going to look at is something very similar. So here I just took the total profit, this column here, total profit, and I'm using the percentage of total, right? So we can now see the data and look at and understand which region is bringing in the most revenue. And we can, if we're just analyzing this data, we can see that Europe and Africa account for 50% of all of our revenue because that's 50% of a total of all of our net profit. And if you're a business owner, you know that maybe you can do some marketing around those regions to maximize on your potential and maybe generate more revenue. But that accounts for 100% of all of our net profit. So let me show you this pivot table very quickly so that you can see. Let's cancel out of that. And the second one is using percent total. So let's edit. All right, so my first calculation is the one that we looked at already, which is simply the total profit. Okay, very simple calculation. And the second one is also very simple. It's the same exact calculation or same exact formula, but instead of show as no calculation, I'm showing it as percent of total. Okay, which looks at the column before and gives me the percent of total until we get to 100% profit. Okay, good way to, understand percentage-wise where the revenue is coming from, even if you break that down based on the employee level. So if you were to get down to a granular look at all of the regions, oops, let me reload that really quickly. Let's expand that. It's going to basically tell you in terms of your employees, the percentage-wise, which employee might be bringing in the most revenue for that specific region, okay, where that profit is coming from. All right, my third example. Many people, not only do we want to see the data load on the pivot table, but we also want to be able to tell how quickly we can filter the data based on the other inputs. So if you have a search form, here I'm using some cascading options. We're also using a range because I want to be able to do, maybe units sold from 1,000 to 3,000. We can also do a date, but how quickly will the data be able to load? Right, so let's say we select Europe. I want to select a few countries here, maybe a few employees, maybe a few item types, and just show me between 3,000 units sold and 6,000. We can also include a date field too. Just going to hit search here. And hopefully you can see how quickly that is, how quickly that loaded. I mean, we're talking about 1 million entries. And Caspio is built on SQL, Microsoft SQL, and the expected end result there should be a little bit of lag, but you're only going to get a little bit of lag once you hit maybe 3 million, 5 million entries and above that. But even if that happens, if you ever get to that point where you have that much data in your tables, again, not all is lost. We can still optimize your account to have much better performance. Okay? And hopefully by then you are generating a lot of revenue and you can justify maybe going for a different plan or adding that optimization to your account. Okay? Let me see if I missed any questions here. Give me 1 second. The dropdown works for me as well. Good. Hello, Ned. Hope I didn't miss anything important. Not yet. But if you did, you can always watch the session at a later time. Okay, let me take a look at my question. How about edit icon in list and open pop-up to edit the record? Yes, so you can do that as well. I think I had that in one of my other applications. Let me think for a second which one I did that in. That's my example for the sales CRM. Let me just find it. I think what you're hoping to, wait, let me take a look at the question one more time. Edit icon in list and open up the pop-up to edit the record. Okay, so if you're looking at a results page, right? Something like, let me think for a second. Where is the example that we just looked at? So okay, let me come back to that question in a few minutes once we look at our final example, because in the final example, I have the edit link in the results page. Okay, but for now, let's talk about the search interface. So I added a very simple filtering search at the very top of my pivot table. Okay, hopefully you guys know how to create the search form by now. We covered that many times in many other videos that we've had, so we're not going to talk about how to create the search form. This is just using simple cascading list boxes that allow us to do a multi-select. And then we have a range list box, which is a standard feature in Caspio. Everything that you see here is a standard feature in Caspio. Okay? I'm not familiar with pivot tables. Are they used for anything besides calculations and organizing numerical data? You can use it for more than organizing, calculating data. But pivot tables are going to give you your data in aggregate, right? So you can, I guess primarily it's used for calculating if you have numerical data in the tables. That's how many people use pivot tables, to do massive calculations. Like for example, in this case, if I reset the search and I go back to any, you're not going to be able to do this using a tabular report to get kind of like the fields here across the top and fields on the left-hand side. All of your data is going to appear in rows and columns this way. So you can't really summarize the data and get these massive calculations in a one screen. You're going to have loads of data and you have to scroll up and down. It's not going to calculate the data in this type of a format. So pivot tables are very useful if you wanted to see fields across the top. This is a better example if you wanted to have fields across the top in the report and fields on the left-hand side, and you're basically performing calculations in the middle. So I would say, and I could be wrong about this, but I'm going to say that maybe 80% of applications use pivot tables to calculate data. Okay, so if you do have numerical data in your tables, very helpful to use pivot tables for calculations. I'm actually, as I'm pausing here, I'm taking a moment just to think about something that you can use a pivot table without doing calculations. But I'm having a hard time coming up with the example. But if I think of something, I will bring it up in the next live stream, just so that I can answer that question more accurately. Okay, so that is my third example, okay, of how we can use pivot tables. Great reporting tool. Okay. And the final example that we have is the one that has fields across the top, which I'm using a date field, and I'm grouping my data based on month so that we can see the breakdown of all the regions by month, how much revenue, and then also the pivot tables allow us to drill down. So if I click on the cell, I can see all the countries in that region, and I can also see the calculations. Okay, and now to answer the question that just came up not long ago, let me just see who submitted the question. It was Digital, Haresh. So I think the question was, can I click on this link here in the list view to have that pop up, and then upon submission, have the row be updated. Is that correct? Let me know if that's what you were hoping to do. You can also do that in the list view, or you can do in a tabular view. It's the same idea, so just let me know if that is what you were hoping to see. I'll just wait a few more seconds to see if it comes back in the chat window, so that I know that that was the exact question. Okay, we'll wait for the answer. But the answer is yes. You could do that. You can add the button in the HTML block. Now, I might need to slightly modify the script and maybe even the modal pop-up if it's coming from the results page inside the HTML block. I haven't tested it. I usually put it inside the header of my data page. Normally, I didn't think about adding it to my results page because the results page has an edit link that does an inline edit, which works quickly and accurately. But if you prefer having the pop-up, I'll have to test it to see if it works. I think that it does, but it might require a slight modification. Okay, so let's take a look at this final example that I have on the pivot table. All right, so let me edit. We'll cancel. And the final one with the date column, let's click edit. And we'll just navigate over to the setup. And you can see I'm using order date. That's one of my fields in the table. Okay. And what I did was I selected group date by date rollup, and I'm using date rollup month, okay, which is the most used rollup when it comes to date fields, because people want to be able to separate the data by month. You can also do it by weekday, but then your report is going to stretch out and be really wide. So that's not really my recommendation. Month or year will work perfectly. So if I do month, then I'm using the region and name again for my rows. And I'm doing a very simple calculation here to get the total profit. And then on the next screen, I enable drill down reports. If you enable this checkbox, then you can click on each cell in the pivot table to open up the tabular report. I've also enabled a PDF download on this final report. So on the live, here we have download data, and then it's going to put all of that data onto a PDF. I don't know how long I'll have to wait. Let's just wait a few seconds to see how long that takes. So if you wanted to download the data in PDF or email the data or print that data, here we go. Let me open it. You can see how Caspia places all the data onto a PDF report. And now I can print that. I can download it from my archives, or I can do whatever else I want with the downloaded data. Now there's customization that you can enable on the PDF document. When you're editing the PDF, there's a little pencil icon here. You can further customize that. You can add a logo above the report if you wanted to, your company logo. You can change the format. Here under standard, you can do portrait or you can do landscape, depending on how you want that data to appear when you download it. So lots of useful functionality here when it comes to downloading data. You can also download back into your CSV format on Excel, and then you can extract the data from there and plug that data into a different platform if you want to. So lots of useful customization around downloading data. So once you enable the drill down reports on the next screen, then you go through the standard way of setting up the tabular report. You can include whatever fields you want on the tabular report. And then here in my tabular report, I have my columns, and I'm also doing those same calculations where I can get my total profit so that we can see the margin on how much profit we made from the price to cost and how much revenue we made. Now I have one last thing to talk about pivot tables, which is not very obvious when it comes to modifying the label up here. Let me just find the right one. Let's see, which one has it? One of these has it. Just need to find my pivot table. Let me cancel out of this and let me bring back my examples for pivot tables. So which one? Okay, so here it is, the first one. By default, when you do calculations on the pivot table, you're going to see this label up here, sum of. And it's not really easy to find how you can remove this prefix. Because to me, I don't like that prefix. I like to just say total revenue, total cost, and total profit, just how it looks in this one here. Okay, so you have to go into your localizations to find that. So I created a new localization to remove the sum of. I'm going to hit edit. And where you're going to find that is under reports. You have to go to labels and markers. I think it's here. Let me just make sure. Yeah. Value column. This is the one. Okay, so by default, it's going to look like that. %F of %C. You just have to remove the %F and of, and just have it be as %C. Okay, that removes that prefix in the column heading. Okay, and then once you do that, it's going to completely remove that, and then your column heading is going to look much cleaner. Okay. So as you can see, sometimes these live streams will not take a full hour. Okay. Sometimes they'll be 25 minutes. Sometimes they'll be 30 minutes. I can guarantee you the one that we have on the 28th, since we're off on Monday next week, that one might take a full hour. Because what we're doing next week, or sorry, not next week, 2 weeks from now, is building an entire application, just like we did with our SaaS application for fitness. On the 28th, because we are getting inundated with many applications surrounding COVID-19. A lot of companies are reopening the doors for their employees to come into the office. And the number one application that we get, believe it or not, is to do some kind of an employee self-screening before they go into the office. So what I was planning on doing was creating a simple app that every morning at 6 a.m. we can send an email to each employee in our organization, I would rather do an SMS text, but because I don't want to expose anybody's phone number in my live stream, we're gonna still stick with email. So at 6 a.m., we're gonna send an email to each employee. They're gonna click on the link in the email, which is going to open up the form, and they're gonna be able to provide their symptoms before they go into the office, right? There's gonna be a couple of questions that they need to answer. You know, your temperature. You know, have you been coughing, etc. And if the time permits, I'm going to try to create something dynamic based on their input, whatever variables they provide on that form. I want to have some kind of an automated response to go back to the employee so they don't have to wait for the answer from the admin. Immediately, depending on their selection and answers, they're going to get an answer if they are eligible to go into the office or not. So they have the answer right away in front of them. Now, on the back-end side, HR can log in as well, review all the submissions, and maybe we can supersede the dynamic response, override the dynamic response with our own answer to the employee if we feel that, okay, well, the symptoms are not that severe. You can come in anyway, okay? So I want to create something like that to give you guys even more insight on how we can do dynamic stuff using some simple JS. So again, based on a few questions, depending on the answers, we reply back with the result, okay, in real time, right away. And we're going to combine that with a task so that we send an email daily to each employee. And we're going to know, because I think I might use a checkbox method to flag each employee once they submit the form. Okay, this person answered the form, you know, come into the office. And then we can see which employees did not answer the survey or the questionnaire. Okay. So that is a very popular application. Again, like I said, we're getting so many requests surrounding that. And I thought it would be a good idea to show you, maybe not how to build a full-blown system, but at least you can have that initial part that solves a lot of those questions in terms of how we handle the automatic emails and dynamic response upon submission. And actually, Tracy, since you're still here, I know you made that request to do document generation using our templates. I'm talking about, let me come back here and let me cancel that. To do templates, I will be able to do that session in roughly about a month and a half. It's going out of beta very soon. It's limited today in terms of, you know, how when you map out the fields to your table to the PDF template, it's limited in a way that we only support text fields. So if you have checkboxes on that PDF document, it's not built to handle that just yet. But it's going out of beta very soon. In less than a month, we're going to be releasing many more features to the PDF template. And that's why I'm holding back on doing a live stream on that until we go out of beta, which is going to be very soon. And then I'll do a full session on how to do templates with PDF. Okay. So just wanted to, I reminded myself because you're here, I wanted to let you know because that request came in. I keep track of all of the requests in a separate document that I have, and I want to make sure I answer all of your questions in my live streams as they come in. Yep, sounds good. I can let you know also when that live stream will happen, just so that you know the date. Let me see. Hi, Ned. It would be nice to have an app that integrates external hardware like signature pads, fingerprint scanners. Such integrations are really helpful for real life. They are. I am not trying to handle those types of requests. The only reason why I cannot handle those types of requests, not that I cannot, but I don't want to go too deeply into custom development because Caspio, first and foremost, is a no-code platform, and that's going to require API integration. Now, in our last live stream, I mentioned that we might do a session on that. I'm still going back and forth on that because it's going to be very code-heavy to do something like that. A much easier way, if there's a way with Zapier, you can do that. So if Zapier has that third-party solution that handles barcodes and scanning and different things. But on our app extension, in our gallery, we do provide through custom development in our professional services team. As you can see, if I did something like that, not that I want to, because again, it's very code-heavy, okay? But it would be somewhat of a conflict of interest if I now did a signature pad or if I did a QR barcode scan or barcode scanner. We provide this, and because each solution is different from the other, because depending on which service you're trying to connect to, there could be different coding required to actually integrate that with that external provider. Okay, that's why what our professional services team does, they have to investigate a lot of things in the back end to find out if, one, if it can be done, and two, what it's going to take for us to integrate with that service or that provider. Okay, as much as I would love to do that, in these live streams, we're not going to be able to do something like that. I may down the line do an API on how to connect to maybe MailChimp or I don't know, some other platform out there. And if it's not available in Zapier, if it's available in Zapier, you might be able to get away with it because it's a very simple way of connecting Caspio to outside platforms. I know what you're asking me, Didier. I appreciate the question. I know it's useful because there are many applications out there, especially in the operation side and inventory, which these types of integrations could be useful. But unfortunately, you have to draw the line somewhere. You know, we're going to focus on no code and very low code using some script, HTML, and CSS. And again, like I said, I'm keep going back and forth on the API thing just because it's very involved when it comes to coding. So, but I appreciate the question. Okay. All right, let me know if you have any questions on today's topic and pivot tables. Hopefully you enjoyed today's class. I think on the 28th, we're going to have more fun because we're going to be creating an actual live implementation of something in real life, and something that a lot of companies are looking to add to their operation until we are done with the pandemic. And then from my end, if you guys decide to leave, thank you so much again for attending my live streams, and I always welcome you guys back. You can talk to me offline as well if you have specific requests for the live stream. Happy to take those on as long as they fit within, you know, the requirements of what I'm trying to show in these live streams. How can you find that data page, the data page you embed on Weebly? How can you find the data page you embed on Weebly? How can you find it where? You mean, do you find it on Weebly or do you find it in Caspio? Like, you want to know which data page was embedded in Weebly? Is that the question? And linking back to Caspio. And link it back to Caspio. Well, hopefully I can answer your question. I can open up my Weebly account very quickly here, and let's see if we can work on it together. Let me just log in quick. We'll just do that. Let's log in there. Okay, let me edit and see if I have a data page embedded here somewhere. Okay, so this one was deleted in my account. Let me embed a new one. So let's grab one of my pivot tables for fun. Let's take the pivot table. That gives us our total profit. So we'll deploy that, use the embed code, copy it, paste. Oh, I need to drag over the embed code into my canvas, and let's paste the embed code and hit publish. Okay, let's go to our page. So one way, and this might take a few, I don't know how long it's going to take to actually show back in Caspio where this data page is embedded on this URL here. But in Caspio, eventually, let me just refresh. Eventually, when you click on the properties, you're going to be able to see host pages. And this is going to tell you where that data page is embedded in Weebly. I don't know how long it takes. It could take a few minutes. Okay, it could take a few minutes. Or maybe one day. I don't know how long it takes for Caspio to finally have that here back on our end. Now, Trace, I placed a form on Weebly. How can I find what data page it is? Yes, now Trace back to... yeah, that's a good one. I mean, there's no way really... I mean, I know this is a pivot table. Maybe I'll have a heading up here added above my pivot table to kind of let me know what data page that is in Caspio if I have the naming correctly. So say, for example, I name that data page net profit. I don't know. Let's just call it. This is one way, okay? Maybe not the best way, but let's call this total net profit. Okay, that's the data page name. I will edit my data page and I will add a heading above my pivot table. So let's add a header and footer, and I'll just say total net profit. Highlight, bold, make it a little bit bigger so it stands out. Hit finish. And now I have that name in Caspio, and then on the Weebly, I can have my heading. So that kind of tells me that's total net profit. I can reference that back to Caspio. So that's one way I've done in the past. How I can quickly find what data page that is. Otherwise, there's really no way to tell from the Weebly side back in Caspio what data page that is. The only other way is really just to go back to Caspio, click on properties, and eventually this will be updated with that host page so that you know where it's embedded. So hopefully that helps you out. I don't know if it will. Can you do it through an app key? Yes, actually, that's a good idea. If you right click and you look at the page source and you do Control F on the keyboard to pull up this search bar, and if we look for app key, well, actually, will it render the app key? It should. Okay, so I guess you can't really look for app key anymore. That used to be in the embed. But the app key is here. But if you look for Caspio, let's just say we look for Caspio, then it's going to pull up the app key, right? So if you do something like this, let's just say we open this up and we grab the app key up here, copy it, go back to Caspio, and then you can search, paste, and that's going to pull up that data page for you. Not only is it going to pull up the data page name, but you can see what app name it is, what data source, and you can see other referenced information pertaining to that data page. Yeah, good thinking there. Yeah, thank you. I forgot all about being able to inspect the document and look at the and look for the app key in the embed code. Good tip. Yep, you got it. Think you answered that question yourself? There's so many different ways of finding things in Caspio. Sometimes you forget things, you know, especially if you don't use it, you lose it, you know, as I always say. But this is a very powerful way of being able to find. Sometimes you'll have multiple applications deployed across many websites. And then you'll have many different applications. And then to quickly find that data page, instead of going through each application, if your naming convention isn't good, then you can just use the search bar at the top to find that data page quickly. So I can see why this could be very useful. If in your account you have, 100 data pages, 200, 300, much easier to find that way. Okay, any other questions before we wrap things up? Once again, good to see many of you in my live stream. Thank you so much. I'm considering, and you guys let me know in the chat window if this makes sense. I know Mondays are usually very busy for people. So we are considering moving the live stream to maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. So if that's helpful for many of you, just let me know. We can definitely move the live stream for a different day in the week, because Mondays, again, tend to be very hectic and busy, and a lot of people can't make it. So if midweek is better, then yeah, we can definitely move the live stream. No problem at all. I would hate to do it just because many people now know to, carve up that time in their calendar for 10 a.m. so they don't plan anything around that. So you guys just let me know what you think is best. And if the majority of the people feels that we should move it, then we can definitely move it. All right, so if you guys can like the video, thank you so much. I appreciate it. We do want to grow this community. On average, we get about 15 to 20 people attending these live streams. We want to be able to get to 50, even 100 at some point. Because again, in Caspio, there's always something new to learn. And we're going to be covering lots of different topics. I like using everything during the week that I learned on Monday. Okay, perfect. And I think you'll find the next live stream very helpful in how we handle certain parts of the application. You know, when I send a dynamic response, when you fill out the questionnaire and you want, based on their input, to have a different response right away, that's not a standard feature in Caspio. Like the way you will handle that today is when you submit the form, you're going to see a confirmation message. Your submission was successful, and then we can notify the HR to let them know, hey, this employee submitted the form, generate a response. And now they need to provide a response, maybe a text area, letting the user know, hey, you were around somebody who had COVID in the last 14 days. You shouldn't come to the office. Okay? So that will be the standard way of handling something like that today, which still works. It's functional, but it's not as quick. So what I'm hoping to do in the next session is show you how to use a little bit of scripting to provide that automated response, which is going to have a set of questions. And if you answered A, B, or C on questions 1 through 3, give me this response. If you answered A, B, and D with a different response, give me this response based on those answers, something like that. I'll try to see if I can I don't want to make it too confusing, but just a very simple response that we can generate. And then from there, you guys are going to be able to modify the script yourself if you want to take it to the next level and have even more responses. Okay, sounds good. We'll keep it for Mondays then, for now. Yep, that's what we're going to attempt to do. I won't make any promises. We're still going to do the task to send that email daily to each employee. But if I have enough time, I will try to come up with something to generate that automatic response. All right. Thank you guys so much. Again, I really appreciate it. Hopefully, I'll see you on the 28th. You can follow me on Twitter. I always post on Twitter and LinkedIn when the upcoming sessions are going to go live, or you can just tune back into our YouTube channel as well to set a reminder. Hey, Tracy, I'm still surprised that you have more to learn. Tracy is a seasoned developer. She's been using Caspio for many years. I've talked to her in the past before too, and I know that I learned a few things from her as well. So glad to hear that you can still learn some things from these live streams. I appreciate that. Okay, thank you, Dexter. Until then, you guys have a good week. Okay, stay safe, and I will see you next time. Okay, I'll keep the chat open, and I will end the live stream. Have a good day, guys. Bye-bye. Thanks, Barrett.